Welcome back to my channel. So for the month of June, I took a trip while staying in the house and not really going anywhere. So that was fun. Went all around the world and got back shortly after midnight. Shortly after midnight Eastern time on Sunday. So it was very exciting. Saw all sorts of places. Not nearly as in real life as I have liked. And sometime I do need to visit Toronto to actually hang out in their library because that looked really cool. And the giant bookstore in Buenos Aires looked amazing. And I need to go down there, and yeah. So, in addition to making me slightly more interested in travel, I'm not much of a travel person. I've been poor all my life, and travel is hard when you're poor. So I think that's ultimately, it's not going to happen. But, yeah, it could be fun. Maybe as I get older and have gotten old enough to get retirement, then maybe, the American version of being on a pension. We don't get that much, but still more than what I've got right now. So plans for the future. I have maybe 4 decades before I get to that point. So there's time. And you never know. I did live for a year in Seattle, which I never would have imagined would happen. So you never know. In 4 decades, I could be anywhere. In the meantime, I got back from my month-long trip around the world, also known as the Amazing Readathon, hosted by Bree from Four Paws and a Book. It was an amazing event. I'm definitely looking forward to next year. I really liked this year's team's setup, where it was by genre. Not everybody did, and I think some of that had to do with how many genres you read, what you've been reading already this year, how happy you are with binge reading a genre for a whole month. And how well you chose your genre. We had several people in our sci-fi team that kind of fell off reading sci-fi because it really wasn't as much their thing as they thought it could be, which happens. There were a couple of us that really thrived in that environment, like, ooh, I get to binge read classic sci-fi and get points for it? Yes. I spent the last 10 days or so of June just binge reading almost entirely just classic science fiction. Partly an audiobook because I do rescue kittens, and during kitten season I do a few more audiobooks so that I can clean while listening to books. So I did a few more audiobooks just so that I could get stuff done. I have 3 new littles, by the way, so definitely kitten season. I'm anticipating maybe as many as 12 more. But they'll only be here for maybe 3 weeks, and then they're going to go away again. So it's fun. If you're thinking about fostering, definitely look into it. It really can be just a couple weeks commitment per group. A lot of kittens just are safer when they're in a house instead of in the shelter when they're in that crucial kitten period. So anyway, back to my trip. I'm going to be doing a wrap-up in 3 videos because a month-long readathon that's that intense generates a lot of books, and I'm not going to make you guys sit through 2 hours of just me talking about books. It's not worth it. So 3 videos, you can speed me up. I think I'm enunciating enough that in 2 times speed you can still understand what I'm saying. If not, 1.75 is usually good. Yeah. And I'll try not to speed up so much that when you do speed it up, it's impossible. How's that? Because I know a lot of people are doing their wrap-ups right now, and we're going to be balancing our time between watching videos and reading books this month. First of all, my favorites for the month, before I get into a play-by-play. My favorite books that I have in print still to show for the month of June were these. So I've got Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I've got a short story collection, Modern Classics of Science Fiction, edited by Gardner Dozois, and a reread of The Grey King by Susan Cooper. I also really enjoyed my reread of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'll show off my nice fancy omnibus book of that, but I reread it so much that it doesn't get to be showcased because I reread it all the time. It's my bedtime stories, along with Discworld and a few other series. But Susan Cooper's books, I've not found audiobooks that I can access easily for bedtime. And so I've never actually heard the audiobooks for that series. I think there are some, but they're not very long. They're middle grade chapter books centered around Celtic mythology and kind of the old ones, and the youngest and last old one, and they're trying to prevent the dark from rising. And it's the Dark is Rising series. I read The Grey King as book 4, and I'll get to that. But yeah, there was a prompt where book 4 was useful. So anyway, first leg of the amazing readathon. We were tasked to read a book that we did not buy in order to get to Toronto. And we could choose to walk, take a train or a boat, or fly. We had travel bucks that we could use for those options. Walking is free. Taking a train or a boat was a price that would add up to having enough travel bucks for the whole month if that's all you did. And then flying was double. Or not double. Flying was more expensive. Each leg the prices changed, but walking's always free, and yeah. If it sounds complicated, it kind of was, but it made sense as we went along. So for Toronto, I chose the middle option because my book was The Lost Cause by Cory Doctorow. This book is a near-future dystopia climate fiction. And it had some issues. I went into a lot more detail, or some more detail, in my wrap-up. The first of my, I think, 2 wrap-ups for June. Talking about The Lost Cause and The Free People's Village, which I also read during leg 1. Both were library books. Both of them I've had to turn in. They're not here anymore. But they were both climate fiction, similar sort of world, following different sorts of characters, but similar sorts of issues. But the authors handled these things very differently. And obviously their concerns were slightly different. So that was a fun comparison. I've enjoyed that all month, comparing ways different authors treat similar stories. It's one of the fun things about focusing on just one genre. I also read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy again, 4 points. And Dendrites, an arc by Kallia Papadaki, for a book with a one-word title. Free People's Village was a first-person point of view, and Hitchhiker's Guide was an author I've read before, obviously. And then The City in Glass by Nghi Vo. I really liked this one. I will be looking at more of her books. That one was for a book with less than 1,000 ratings. That was an ARC. It hasn't come out yet. It obviously doesn't have that many ratings. So that was great. And then A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers was going to be leg 1, but I ran out of time. Leg 2 dropped, and I just had to move on. So that became a book for leg 2. And these books that are not the main prompt, we had the prompts ahead of time for them. They're called Sightseeing, and we could read them in between the main prompts and get points. But as soon as the new prompt dropped, we had to get to the new city before we could go back to those, sightseeing prompts. So, leg 2, we were going to Buenos Aires. This one we had to have a book with 2 points of view, just 2. So, there are a lot of books that say they are and are not. A lot that have sneaky extra points of view. So a lot of the hassle in this one was just finding a book that only has 2. I went online. There's a list generated by readers of the 52 Books Challenge, because they used a prompt like this. And they said Ninth House worked, which it did. So I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. 461 pages, so I also took the I took the train or the boat or a bus. Considering we're going from Toronto to Buenos Aires, probably a combination, but the ground route, not the flying. So both of the first 2 legs, I got the number of points equal to the number of pages of the book. Just straight across. And then I did some sightseeing for leg 2. Leg 2 was nice for sci-fi, for team sci-fi, because we won leg 1. Our prize for winning leg 1 was that any books we read that were host favorites earned us double travel bucks. And one of the host favorites was the Hitchhiker's Guidebook. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and its series. This is a 5-book series, and I obviously like the whole thing, so I have it and listen to the audiobooks regularly. So, of course, leg 2, it behooved me to finish the rest of the series right away in leg 2 to get those travel bucks. So I did. So Restaurant at the End of the Universe and So Long and Thanks for All the Fish were both for 500 point prompts. Restaurant at the End of the Universe was for a book written before 2001. I don't remember which one So Long and Thanks for All the Fish was for, but another one of the 500 point prompts. I did Life, the Universe, and Everything for a book with travel. Or involving travel for 300 points, and Mostly Harmless also for 300 points for a third-person point of view. So that was nice. I also did A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is the sequel to A Psalm for the Wild Built, which was also a host favorite. I didn't want to reread A Psalm for the Wild Built, so I just went on to the second one. For a 5-star prediction, easy prediction, it was great. And then I also did A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which was absolutely adorable. And that one was for a book involving food. It has a sourdough starter familiar. Yes, it's about food. So that was cute. I also did some 400 point sightseeing. I did Players by Terrance. It's a Doctor Who book about aliens using humans in a sort of role-playing, war game. So it's definitely a book involving a game. And then Space Cats by Craig and Shane Price, an ARC. I think it's been published before, like self-published, but maybe they did some tweaking and editing before this one's coming out. Because when I looked it up on Goodreads to log it, I could find one with just, I think, Craig Price listed, not both authors. So it's been out, but this is a new version. And in any case, this one was a clean copy, and it read fine. Craig Price, I believe, is the one that was a 10th grader when writing this book. So that's kind of cool. And the cover is adorable. It's a cat wearing a space helmet. And the whole book is about cats and dogs in space. No humans, just the cats and the dogs, and they have their territories in space, and they're trying to avoid war or, some variation on that. Yeah, fun. And I did Ghost of the Neon God, which, even though I've had to re-record this video, I don't know how many times this week, for reasons, I still never wrote down the name of the author for Ghost of the Neon God. It's an ARC. It's coming out soon. It was really good. May even be out by now. It might have been one coming out this summer, but it was really good. It's a novella, so I logged it for a novella. So yeah, that was good. So I actually did finish my last leg 2 book, go to bed, and then the leg 3 dropped, and I didn't have to worry about scrambling. I'd finished my book that I'd planned on finishing. So no scrambling, no unexpected carryovers. And we were headed to Berlin. And this book needed to be a book with a motion word in the title. So I chose The Rise and Fall of Dodo by Neil Stephenson. I have a sort of love-hate relationship with Neil Stephenson books. A lot of them just get long and dry and tedious, but sometimes he has ones that I really enjoy. I loved Snow Crash. I loved Anathem, but to be fair, Anathem takes about 400 pages before you figure out why it's listed as sci-fi. So if you're not ready for 400 pages of just getting into the story before you know even why it's in the shelf that it's in, it may not be for you. I enjoyed it. It has a lot of math and nerdiness, but so yeah, I'm always a little wary going into his books. I read several for June. This was the first one. Rise and Fall of Dodo looks huge when you pick it up. It's only 752 pages. So it actually doesn't even qualify as a tome if tome means 800 pages or bigger. But it was big enough that I think I did fly for Berlin, since I did get extra GRC or travel bucks the previous round. So I did fly for this one, which doubled my points. So 752 page book was a 1,504 point book plus 50 points for it being sci-fi. So that was a nice book. And it was funny, and I enjoyed it. Probably one of my favorites of his books, right up there with Snow Crash and Anathem, which was not the case for some of the other books I've read by him lately. But I really enjoyed Rise and Fall of Dodo. My sightseeing books, I finished 6 of them in leg 3. One was a novella in audio form that I don't know if it's got a print version. Some of the Doctor Who books are just in audio. So this one was called Ish by Philip Pascoe. It wasn't bad, but I think this is one where being a novella hurt it. It needed to be longer to develop the story better, because it just felt rushed. But it was short, and for this kind of game, short is good. I'm not used to counting so many short books. That was kind of me pushing my envelope a little bit, getting used to actually logging shorter books and not feeling uncomfortable about it. So, in my family's reading competitiveness thing, there's 4 of us kids, and we used to compete for who could read the most books every year. And we didn't really set a minimum page limit, but if one of us counted it, everyone could. and it kind of kept everybody from reading the short stuff and counting it as a single thing. So I still have that ingrained in me. So this has been good for kind of pushing my boundaries a little bit. For how long does it have to be before I feel okay counting it as a book? But this one was almost a 2-hour audiobook, so definitely long enough. And it was only for a 100-point prompt, so I felt okay with that. I don't know why, being a smaller point prompt makes it feel better, but it did. And then I did an arc of Reboot by Malara Dark for a self-published book. I had to go and figure out how to find books that were self-published on Netgalley to find myself one that was both sci-fi and self-published. This one was really good. I don't remember when it comes out. I always forget to write this down on my notes, but I do. But it was really good. Kind of a Groundhog Day sort of story where things just keep starting over. It kind of feels like they're in a video game. It reminded me of the Librarians episode where they land themselves in kind of a bubble universe video game. So kind of that sort of feel. I won't say any more about what actually is going on because I would give away too much, but it was really fun. And kind of has a zombie vibe to it as well, if you like that stuff. I did The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline. For a BIPOC author. It is Native Americans running for their lives from the government in a rather twisted future. And it was really good. So highly recommend it. It was fun. It was definitely not a story I've read before in sci-fi, which is unusual. So that was good. And then for Only Words on the Cover, I did Nebula Winners 13 by Samuel Delaney, edited by Samuel Delaney. A lot of these annual science fiction collections are just text on the cover. So that one was an easy book for that prompt. And I love sci-fi short stories, so I read quite a few during June. We had The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by another author I didn't write down, and I should know this author's name. Taylor Jenkins Reid? That might actually be it. That one was for a book with over 100,000 reviews on Goodreads. And it also could have worked for a book that Brie gave 5 stars. But I already had one lined up that I thought was going to be great, that I didn't end up using for that, but could have. But I really liked Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Definitely worth reading. I gave it 5 stars as well. Not sci-fi, but the books that Brie has read that are sci-fi, either I couldn't get them, or I didn't really want to read them, or I've already read them before and didn't want to reread them. So she does read some sci-fi that she rated 5 stars, but our tastes are not so nicely aligned in science fiction. Whereas a lot of the books that Brittany, one of our team leaders for Team Sci-Fi, chose for her host favorites, and I'd already read all but one and really like them. So apparently our tastes in sci-fi are pretty similar. Not so much for Zoe's books. First of all, I couldn't find them. My library did not have any of our other team leaders' host favorites, and I couldn't find them anywhere, and I'm very poor, so I can't just go and buy books. So that was a little frustrating. I could only get half of our host favorite books for our own team's leaders. So that was a little frustrating, and I think a couple other people also noted that we really didn't have a lot of actual science fiction genre host favorites to choose from. So that I think was one of the bigger frustrations for me, although it wasn't a deal breaker, it was just annoying. But In any case, Seven Husbands was really good. Not a host favorite. It was just a book that a lot of people have read and talked about. The last book that I registered for a sightseeing prompt in leg 3 was A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. And actually, I think it was not chronologically the last one I logged, because I'm pretty sure I did Ish afterwards. Because this is the one where I finished A House with Good Bones at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was tired and I was going to bed. And A House with Good Bones is horror. So not sci-fi. I didn't get the extra points bonus for sci-fi on that one, because it's not. It was creepy. And it was not the sort of book that you listen to before bed unless you really like that sort of stuff for bedtime, which apparently I don't. So 3 o'clock in the morning, I was poking around on YouTube, despite being really tired, looking for somebody doing sprints so that I could talk to somebody and chat and then read another book so I could get the horror book out of my head before I went to bed. So that was memorable. Yeah, a bit creepy. Good, potent horror novel. So I actually did Ish after that, and then went to bed. And Ish was a nice palate cleanser. Not really super memorable, but it worked for getting horror out of my head, so that was good. And then later that morning, we had a new prompt, and all was good. We were on our way to Paris. This might have been the one that they switched the city mid-sprint. Everybody came back from sprints and it was a new timer. There was one or two, but one for sure where they did that. It was very cleverly done. The timers, by the way, were made by Margaret, the word nerd, and she did an amazing job on those timers. They're, works of art sort of thing. So yeah, the whole thing was really, really, really well done. I run a readathon that happens 3 times a year for one weekend. There's no way that I do anywhere near that kind of work on mine. So huge, huge hats off for these ladies. They did an amazing job. So anyway, leg 4, Paris. And I must have slowed down a bit in finishing books around this point, because I don't think Paris was that short a leg. But when I actually tallied up what I finished when, I'd only done 2 sightseeing books in leg 4. Like, how? But yeah, I read Dune, or listened to Dune, rather, by Frank Herbert, as a reread. And I did pull up the ebook on this one, because I was going to use my print copy. And this is one where I was agonizing over it, because other people that were also using Dune were using the modern printing of it, which is 883 pages. My print copy is this old guy, and it's obviously not. They crammed what comfortably fits in 883 pages into 500 and some pages. And when I was in my 20s, I probably could have read this just fine and not thought too much about it, except even then I think this printing would have bugged me, because the printing goes so far into the crease that you have to break the spine to see all the words. So it's not very nicely printed. So I ended up having to pull up the ebook to be able to read the print in between audiobook sessions. So I ended up going with the page count for the modern printing, but, yeah, I agonized over it for way longer than I probably needed to. Everybody else was using the modern version and the modern page count. Yeah, I mean, but the book that I have to hold up is not that long, but I didn't actually read it. So, yeah. Anyway, I do like the cover on this one. It sets the scene nicely for what Arrakis looks like. But yeah, so that was one of my quibbles over how to count books for what. My sightseeing for Paris, I did 2, both in the 400 point level. I did The Time Traveling Fashionista by Bianca Turetsky. This one turned out not to be sci-fi despite the time travel, because the only time traveling element is a magic dress. Like, really? It was historical fiction with magical realism and a magic dress, basically. Yeah. So I read it. It wasn't very long, but I was a little annoyed that the time travel didn't pan out for extra points. It was cute if you like YA historical fiction. They went to the Titanic. So that was kind of fun. And then I did Night Watch by Terry Pratchett, which is a genre blend, which I used it for that prompt. It is time travel, and it does have a lot more sci-fi to the time travel. They get into the mechanisms of time travel and paradoxes and all that stuff that they didn't even mention it really in the Fashionista one. So it was a nice comparison for deciding what you have to have and how much of it for it to work as sci-fi. But that's all I did for sightseeing for Paris. I started a lot of books that I didn't finish in leg 4. So later on, by like leg 9, leg 10, I had a lot of these books that I'd started them and just kind of languished with them, that I was able to resume and get way past 50% for most of them. I think I had 3 or 4 books that were not done by the end of June, where I used that it has to be 50% or higher to count it, like 51% or higher. So I did have a few that I logged finally at where I was at that were like 60%, somewhere in there. But almost every book that I logged was actually completed. During the actual event, there were no DNFs. So the only DNF-ish sightseeing I logged were right at the end, those ones that I was mostly done with, enough to count them. So that was fun. So anyway, that is the first 4 legs. I will let this video upload and post it, and then see about doing the next leg in the next video. So we will resume this journey with leg 5 in the next video. And I probably will be able to get into the meat of the video faster, as this will be a series and I don't have to explain how it all works 3 times for all 3 videos. So yeah, if you have not done any readathons before and are thinking about doing a readathon, I am working right now on reading books for the tarot readathon. So that's what I'm up to in July. And then I don't remember what else I'm doing. There's a competitive one next month that I joined, and so there's a lot of them coming up. I've heard rumors of some more that I'm supposed to leave slots open for. So yeah, there's plenty coming up. I will be running the Dewey's Readathon this month. It's only a weekend long. I'll talk more about it in another video. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to do some of these extremely social but still nerdy antisocial reading events. So yeah, catch you guys in the next video. Hopefully you guys had a lot of fun reading in June, and if you are also doing a wrap-up video for TAR, the Amazing Readathon, let me know in the comments so that I can check out your video, because now that we don't have to worry about giving away secrets to other teams, we can finally say what we've been reading and why and how it went. And yeah, so we want to know. So, talk to you again soon, guys. Bye!